Hi, my name is Michelle Unger and I am with Quality PC Training, and today I'm going to do a webinar on the 5 must-have Excel skills for professionals. So just a little bit about Excel. Excel skills are essential in today's world, and proficiency in them is going to open up lots of doors for career opportunities. So we're going to discuss today some basic to intermediate Excel skills that you need to know so that you can put them into practice immediately. So, a little bit of background on Excel. Its main use is as a spreadsheet application, so you can use it to organize, analyze, and present data. And this includes things like budgeting, financial analysis, data visualization, and project management. So, a little bit of background about Excel. It was created 40 years ago in 1985. It's morphed from being a solely business use to its application in almost every aspect of daily life. So, we can use it in education, government, not for profits, and personal use. So, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and jump right in here with our presentation. We are going to be using some practice files that I will have for you. I will have those available for you so that you can practice right along with this. So I will put those in a download so that you have access to them. So let's first talk about what we're going to cover today. And just to kind of give you an overview, this is not an exhaustive list of skills that you should have in Excel, but it's a pretty good starting point. So we're going to be covering just a few of these today. And certainly there's a lot more than this, but we are going to be taking a look today at filtering and sorting. We're going to look at pivot tables, sum if and sum ifs, count if and count ifs, and then we're going to have some shortcuts that we can use as well as a free download for you. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So, a little bit about us. We are a comprehensive digital skills training company. We specialize in breaking down technology into bite sized pieces. So, why do we do bite sized pieces? We want people to be able to retain what they've learned to apply it in real world situations. So, we essentially have 3 different modalities that we use: virtual, which is what you're experiencing right now. We can also do in person training, which would be at your location or our location located in Blaisdell, New York. And soon we're going to be launching some self-paced courses. So that's going to be very exciting, where you can access training 24/7 for lifetime use. All right, so for today's session, we are going to be covering just a few of these topics. So we're going to start off with our data sorts and filters. We're going to move on to pivot tables, sum ifs and count ifs, and then finally finish up with some shortcuts. All right, so just a few things before we get started. If you have any questions, you can type them in the chat. We can answer those questions both in real time and post webinar. And the workbook we're going to be using today is called Computer Store Participant Workbook. So that's going to also be available to you. So we're going to go ahead and get started on the sales order worksheet. And I always recommend to make a copy of your worksheet before we begin, or actually make a copy of your workbook so that you can practice multiple times over and over again. All right, so let's go ahead and begin. So we're going to begin with our first topic, which is data sorts or sorting data. So at first glance, data sorting seems easy, but it can sometimes pose some problems and be a little bit tricky. So when you're sorting something either alphabetically or numerically or some other way, there it's usually pretty straightforward, but we're going to also talk about sometimes when it's not going to be very straightforward, where you maybe need to have a few tricks up your sleeve to make things work. All right, so a few things about our practice files. So you want to stay organized from the start. You should make a copy so that you can practice later. So I did mention that in the introduction. You also want to know that this is a fictional office supply store. So this is not a real store. So we're using fictionalized data, and each row is going to represent a record. So let's go ahead and get started on the sales order worksheet. So what we've got here are a few names. We've got about 44 records here. So we've got our first name, last name, product, price, quantity, and date. So as I mentioned before, it's fairly simple to do this. If you wanted to do a sort by first name, you would click anywhere in the column for the first name. You could go right up to data and simply choose A to Z. Now, when you do that, it's going to put the first name in order, starting with an L. Now, one of the things I want to kind of let you become aware of is oftentimes I see people choose the entire column. You don't have to do that. So that actually can cause a little bit of problems. So you want to make sure that you're just simply clicking on a cell someplace in the column that you want to sort by. The next thing that you should know is that if you switch to a different column, the sort is going to apply to that column now. So it's going to unsort the first one and sort it instead by this next column. So I'm going to click in last name. I'm going to click right in Pickney's name, A to Z, and there we go. Now it's resorted. So that's pretty much the classic use case of when you're doing sorting. But I'd like to talk a moment about sometimes when things are a little bit different. So let's take a look over here at this table that is off to the side here. So if we are doing a sort in here, and say that we wanted to do a sort in alphabetical order. So I would click on this cell for tablet, and when I click on A to Z, what you notice is the headers actually get sorted. So that's one of those cases where it's not going to be as simple. So I'm just going to undo this for a moment. So what you want to do in this situation is you actually want to select the column header as well as all of the text you want to sort. So you have to select the range. Now when I do an A to Z sort, it's going to prompt me and ask me if I want to expand the selection or continue with the current selection. So we want to choose continue with the current selection and sort. Now it's going to sort just that data, not the data over here, and it's not going to include the header row. Other things you should be aware of are the header rows in particular. So I mentioned the term header row. That includes all of the labels that are up here, and these are also considered header rows as well. So whenever you're creating your data sets, best practice is to somehow differentiate your header row from the rest of your data. So it could be something as simple as just making it bold, like in this case. So I made my header bold. It could be italics, it could be a change of font. And the reason why you want to do that is because you want to avoid the problem that I just showed you where you have the header row also being alphabetized or placed in order. So by differentiating that from the beginning, it's going to help prevent those problems. All right, so we took a look at some simple sorts. Let's talk about some other ways you can sort your information. So I'm going to go ahead and click over here, and I can do, actually, I'm going to go over here to date. So another type of sorting you can do is sorting by date. So when you do that, you can decide exactly how you want to sort by. So here's that trick I showed you. You want to make sure your data has headers. You don't have to check this if you've already created headers. So say, for example, I want to first sort by date, and I want to go newest to oldest, and then I'm going to add a level. Maybe I want to next sort by product. So I'm going to choose that as my next level, A to Z. Now when I press OK, it has everything in order, first by date, then by product. So it's going to keep that information in there for you. So I'm just going to go back here and change this up for a moment. So let's say we want to go the opposite. So maybe we want to first go by product, then by date. And let's go oldest to newest this time, A to Z product. All right, so again, that's going to give you a different sort where it's going to group all of your products first and then dates within each of those products. Okay, moving on to topic 2. This next topic is related to sorts, but this is data filter. So one thing you should know about the difference between data sorts and data filters is, say that you have 50 records. When you are sorting 50 records. You're going to see all 50 records, just you're going to see them ordered differently. When you're filtering, you are setting criteria so that you can exclude or include certain types of data. So say, for example, you were looking at a grocery list and you wanted to include everything that was fruit and you had a category for fruit. You would not see the rest of the categories by doing that. So being able to filter your data is going to help you to quickly find the information that you need. Let's take a look at another sorting situation that might be a little bit unusual. So taking a look at our t-shirt sizes here in the t-shirts worksheet. So let's go back and just do a quick sort here, just like we did before. We can sort by department, But it gets a little bit trickier when you're sorting by t-shirt size, because if your choices are alphabetical and you have small, medium, large, and extra large, small doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily want that at the end because of the letter S. You want that to be in the beginning. So we're going to do what's called a custom sort. So when you do a custom sort, you would sort just like you normally do, but we're going to go over here to where it says options. Actually, we're not going to go to where it says options. We're actually going to click right here, and we are going to do what's called a, right here, t-shirt size, and we're going to choose custom list. All right, so the custom list, I already have one in here. I'm just going to delete this real quick. So what you want to do in a custom list is you want to create the order that you want things to go in. So say, for example, you had beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and you wanted to sort by those levels. Well, again, if you leave it at alphabetical, advanced would come first, but that's not really the sort order that you want. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put this in order by sizes. So we type in small, we press enter, medium, press enter, large, press enter, and extra large. And it is important to spell it correctly and to make it look identical to what you have over here. So next I'm going to go ahead and click add. It's going to add it to this list, and I'm going to press OK and press OK one more time. So now when I do that, notice it's put my t-shirts in size order, which is exactly the way I wanted it. Now, what if I want to go in over here and I want to also do a sort, not just by t-shirt size, but I also want to group it by department. So just like we did before, we're going to add another level. And this time we're going to put it in department order as well. So what that will do is it'll show me all my smalls, but it'll break it down by departments. And the same thing with the additional departments as well. So that's going to be really helpful when you are distributing, right? So you can see what you need to bring for each department in terms of size. So again, that's just another way to do a sort. And we did a custom sort as well. Okay, next we're going to move into our filters. So here's our example for our filters. So as I mentioned, filters are a way to exclude or include certain information. So I'm going to go ahead and click to get back up to the top of this page here. So I've got ID, product, detail, in and out, and I'm on the products page. So let's say, for example, we wanted to filter just for a certain ID number. So again, we're going to click over here. We're going to go up to filter, and each of these columns now is going to get a filter. So what if, for example, I was just looking for just a few of these? So I would turn off select all, 101, 102, 103, press OK. Everything else is going to be hidden, and you can see over here on the row headers, it's going to highlight these in blue too. So you can see that a number of things between 5 and 45 have been hidden. To turn off a filter, you're just going to click on this again and choose clear filter. Now, you can filter multiple columns as well. So say, for example, I'm looking for a particular product. So I go to products and I'm just looking for laptops in this example, and say that I'm only looking for laptops that are between 101 and 120. So I can also do a number filter over here, or I could just simply select that. But if I do a number filter of between, now I can choose between we'll even say 100 in case we miss something, and we'll say 125. So what this is going to do now, it's going to further filter this for us. So now we're only seeing things that match that particular criteria. Okay, so another way you can filter or to remove your filters is to simply go back up here and turn off your filter to bring everything back. So we're going to talk next about another type of filtering, and I like to use this one especially in like a notes column where you're looking for certain things and maybe you want to exclude things. So looking at our detail here, we have an awful lot of Apple products, we've got Panasonic products, but what if we're looking for just Panasonic products, right? And there's a lot of detail in here. So again, I'm going to go ahead into my filter. And this time what we're going to do is a text filter. So your choices are equals, does not equal, begins with, ends with, contains, does not contain. So let's say contains. So the reason why you want to use contains is you just want to find it anywhere in that detail. So if I find, let's say, for example, I'm looking for the word air. Okay. Anytime it finds the word air, it's going to select that for me. So we'll see now we've got Apple Air and MacBook Air. So we've got a whole, another level here of what we're able to do. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this detail. Also, dates is another nice one you can use for this filtering. So I can do a date filter. And if this is something you've done recently, it has a nice tomorrow, today, yesterday, next week, this week. These are all 2024 numbers, so that's not going to work very well for us in this example. But I can do my between. So say, for example, I want to do between last July and September. So I've got this handy calendar over here. I can go ahead and go back. And what did I say? July. So we'll say July 1st, 2024, and we'll say till September 30th. So now it's going to find just the information that pertains to that criteria. So lots of really helpful things with that with your filtering as well. Our next topic is pivot tables. So pivot tables allow you to summarize, count, sum, and perform other calculations on the fly. So oftentimes people will say, I don't even know if I need to use pivot tables. What would I use them for? So I always like to say, if you're doing any type of summarization where you're using terms like I need to group by or sum by or count by. So the word by usually tells you you could really benefit from summarization. And we're going to just kind of scratch the surface here on pivot tables because there is a ton of things to know about pivot tables. I could go on for 8 to 10 to 12 hours about pivot tables, but we want to be able to kind of understand what we can use them for. All right, so to give you a little bit of an overview about pivot tables and how we can use them, I've got some data here in the salespeople worksheet. So I've got several salespeople broken down by region. These are their orders, and this is the month that those orders were made. So when I'd like to do a pivot table, again, I'm going to click in that column. It actually doesn't matter where you click as long as you're someplace in that data set. You're going to go up to Insert, Pivot Table, and just talking about a best practice, I always like to put my pivot tables in a new worksheet. So I know some people like to put it in an existing worksheet. I like to put it in a new worksheet because there is a lot more real estate for me to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and choose new worksheet. And just to kind of give you an overview here, our pivot table reporting area is on the left side. We've got our pivot table fields on the right side. So those fields are driven right from where we started. So in this case, we started in salespeople. And another best practice, if you want, is you should consider renaming your sheet to whatever this is going to be. And I'm just going to call this pivot table salespeople, just so I can kind of keep track of that. All right, so on the right side on our pivot table fields, there's a number of ways to do this. The easiest way to do it is to click on salesperson first, and that's going to create row labels for each of your salespeople. Also notice on the bottom here, it's placed it over here. Now there's a couple of ways to remove this. You can just turn that check mark off, or if I turn it back on again, I can just simply drag it and drop it off as well. So we're going to go ahead and start with salespeople in the rows. Then what I'd like to do is move regions into columns. So I'm going to go ahead and grab region and drop it right into columns. So now we've got the breakdown of each of our salespeople's regions. Next, I'm going to go to orders, and orders is something that can be calculated. So that's going to automatically go into the values field. Now, also notice it's not putting them in currency at this point, and that's okay. We can fix that. But it's also important to note that if there isn't a value in here, it means that this salesperson doesn't have anything to do with that particular region. So we can reorder this a number of different ways. For example, maybe I want to switch the order. So I'm going to grab salesperson, move it over here to columns, move regions down to rows. So again, that's going to give me a totally different view. Now, what if I want to break things down by month? So if I click on month, now I've got my months are broken down within each region. And again, if I want to flip-flop this order, I can just drag, and now I'm breaking this down by months. Also on the left side, you'll see you can collapse these as well. So I can either look at more detail or less detail just by clicking on the minus and the plus sign here. And again, that's going to give you a little bit more information. So pivot tables have a lot of things that you could do with them, including filtering, we're just barely scratching the surface here. But I did want to show you, I'm going to go ahead and take this month. I'm going to actually take orders region off. So I want to just look by month. And I'm going to switch the order here, bringing month over to salespeople and salespeople down to rows. So this is going to give me a little bit of what I want. So the last thing I want to show you with pivot tables here is how to go in and make this currency. So over here on the bottom right, sum of orders. If I click on the drop down, value field settings, and I now want to show this as currency, I would choose number format, currency, 2 decimal places, press OK, and now I'm able to convert that to number format. All right, topic 4 is sum if and sum ifs. So this is using the if, which is a logical operator, to decide whether or not you're going to add up cells that meet specific criteria. So you have to have some type of criteria set. Now, sum if deals with a single criterion. Sum ifs is used for multiple criteria. So you can really utilize this in a lot of different ways, which I'm going to show you next. We're on the years sheet right now where I have a number of different pieces of information here. So I've got just a few years worth of data, and each year is represented here in this column. I've got my dates, my values, and I have my criteria set in D2. So let's take a look first of all at how this is constructed. So if I click in cell F2 and I take a look up at my formula bar, this is a sum if. So let's just break this down for a second. So sum if what? What does this mean? Sum if A2 through A6. So A2 through A6 is what you are going to be evaluating. So I'm evaluating this range of values. The next piece is the criteria, D2. What is the criteria? It's 2021. So I'm saying only sum if the criteria equals 2021. And what am I summing? C2 through C6, the values. So it's only going to sum those values that meet that criteria. In this case, it would be this row right here, 10.50, 208.10, which is 218.6. So let's go ahead and reconstruct this. So I'm going to go into cell F2. I'm going to type in equals sum if. I'm going to double click, and I'm going to go right into the formulas insert function because I always like to kind of break it down for everybody. So let's start with the first part. So range is the range of cells you want evaluated. So again, we're going to be selecting the years. The criteria is going to be this D2, and then our sum range is going to be right here. So that's going to give me that 218.6. Now, why I like this is now I can go ahead and just change this criteria to say 2023. So as soon as I change that, it's going to update that formula to 5.4, which is right there. Or maybe I go over to 2022. So I'm able to use this criteria field to my advantage to input different years. And again, taking a look at that, we've got our formula right in there. Now, if we're taking a look at count ifs are going to count the values that meet a criteria. So I'm still in the years, but now I'm in cell F2. So count if, here's the formula, count if A2 through A6 D2. So it's only going to count how many times the year 2021 appears in that column. So 1, 2, 3. And again, so if I change this to a different number, it's going to go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and recreate that one. So equals count if, and again, I'm going to go to insert function. The range I'm looking at is my years, and my criteria is in D2. So that's going to give me that number for count if. We're going to take a look at count ifs next and sum ifs next, which is when you have multiple criteria. So taking a look at multiple criteria, now I'm going to click into cell G2 over here and explain the formula that I created. So this is a count ifs, which means I have multiple criteria. So the criteria includes the first part, which is A2 through A6, which is saying look in this year, look for 2022, but then what it's going to do is it's going to add an additional criteria, which is I only want to find those values that are less than 200. So let's take a deeper look at this. So count ifs has multiple criteria. So we have our initial criteria that we have in here, just like we did before. But now here's our second criteria range where it's saying look in the values. So we're only going to include values if it's 2022 and they're less than 200. So I wrote that out just by putting that less than symbol in there. So let's go ahead and change that number. And let's say it's going to be 2022. Actually, we're going to change it to 2021. And we're going to say less than 8. So we're going to change this number to less than 8. And we're going to go ahead, press OK. And let's change this to 2021. All right, so now we have 0. So 2021 less than 8. Aha, look at that, 8.10. So that's why we're getting 0. So again, you can construct this, change the variables any way you want to. You can use greater than, equals to, less than, and it allows you to do different types of criteria. So again, if you wanted to change this to a sum ifs, now you would go back in, change the count to sum. And let's see what we have here. I think we have too many variables in here. So let's take a look. I actually went back to the other sheet that already had the sum in there. So this was the sum, which was showing the criteria of 2022, and then it was finding 7.2 as being the only one that had that value. So let's do a sum ifs over here. So we're going to use that same information, but now what we're saying is less than 10.5. So we're going to keep that same information in there. We're going to get that same number because we have multiple variables. But again, let's change this number to 2021. And as soon as we do that, now our number is 8.10 because it meets that criteria. So let's take a look over here. So again, multiple criteria. We do our first sum range, which is the values. Criteria range is A2 through A6, and then we're looking for a match for 2021. Second criteria is we're only going to add up the values if they equal the criteria of both being 2021 and less than 10.5. So I'm going to change this number to less than, let's see, 8.5. So now there is, let's see, it looks like I put in an extra parentheses here. So let's go back in and change this. That says it's invalid because I put a comma in there instead. So less than, commas and decimals make sense. All right, so now it only found the 1. So being able to use sum ifs, count if, sum ifs, there's a lot of other ifs as well, but being able to use multiple criteria. Other examples that you might have, say for example, you're a teacher and you're looking to give somebody a grade, and you want to say, okay, if they've been absent less than 5 times and they've scored an 80, they're going to get a B, right? And you can set up those different types of criteria. So we kind of grouped count and sum together, but count is very specific in that it's going to count cells, not add them. So again, same thing. If is for singular criteria, count ifs is going to be used for multiple criteria. So let's move on to the last piece here. So this is our shortcuts. So time for some shortcuts to help us work more efficiently. So I am going to place in the downloads, you're going to have a shortcut cheat sheet, if you will. And there are several different types of shortcuts that you can use in Excel to help you move around a little bit more efficiently and do some different types of things. In my shortcuts section, I'm in the sales order field. So one of the ones that you can use to move around a little bit is your tab key. So tabbing is going to move you to the right. And I like to use the shift tab to move back. So rather than using the arrows in the keyboard, I like to use the shift tab for a number of different reasons. It just makes it a lot simpler to move around a little bit. But one that I really, really want to show you that is very, very useful, and of course you're going to have those other ones on your cheat sheet there, is this feature right here. So if I click on C2, say that I had like 10,000 rows here. So it doesn't matter if I had 10,000 rows or 50 rows. This shortcut is invaluable. So it's Control Shift down arrow, And whenever you do that, it's going to go ahead and select everything in that column. So that is a great one to use. You should definitely utilize that one whenever you are able to, as well as the shortcuts that I'm going to give you. All right, so that just about wraps it up. So just wanted to say thank you to everybody. Here is my contact information if you'd like to get a hold of me to schedule some classes or training. Remember, we have workshops in a lot of different modalities, and we hope to see you soon at an upcoming seminar or a class. Thank you very much.